Hey all, so final path here. Bit of a longer one. There's some long fights in here, but we're going to start out with Apocalypse here. And so I believe I go ahead and heal up Nimrod a bit. Tigra can take this fight and is absolutely great for it. But honestly, at this point, I'd been playing for several hours already this day, and I just decided to go with the easier one. Because even though this node has electric fluctuations, which is designed to make it harder for robots, Nimrod doesn't really care because the 70% reduced ability accuracy isn't going to hit him because Apocalypse is a mutant and Nimrod is immune to ability accuracy modification when facing mutants. So that part's lost entirely, and our buffs lasting 5 seconds less in their duration is just going to mean that we're going to do a little bit less damage because our armor ups aren't going to last as long. We're still going to ramp plenty quickly, as you can see here, and it also basically means that the Unstoppable on the Special 2 doesn't exist. You can also see here that the Energize is not lasting as long as the Energy Vulnerability, but that's not something that I'm super concerned about because the Energize lasts so long with a SIG 200 Nimrod anyway that it's going to help us get back to this to the Special 2, and that's all that really matters because as you can see, we still have tons of time left on the Energy Vulnerability, and that's how we get that really juicy Special 2, and that's the goal anyway. So going for this parry here, I didn't get it this time. I did the first. If we can get it, it can help us stay in Eradicate, and so that's why I go for it every time. But it's always better to be early on that than late, because you really do not want to take a special to the face. Nimrod can survive it better than most, but let's not test it. So we're going to try and parry here because that'll keep us in Eradicate, and it does. So our timer resets. We have that energy vulnerability up. We land another big special 2. And this fight is going extremely well. We're almost 2/3 of the way through it with just 2 big special 2s. He just caught me there. I can't even remember if my inputs were bad or not. Whatever. Anyway, we landed most of another special 2 with the energy vulnerability still up. Again, SIG 200 Nimrod is just a different animal. Extra duration, as well as extra potency on a lot of these effects, means that even in complex fights, things just line up more often and more easily, and that just makes the whole kit sing. Now, I probably should have just pushed him to the special 2 here. I'm very confident with the decks. It would have been fine. I don't know. I think I was mostly baiting special ones because I'm comfortable parrying them, and so that does give me more armors. Lost a little bit of time there, but we're really not concerned about time on this particular one. Gauntlet is a marathon in general, and this is a very quick fight. So that is our 4th special 2, I believe, and Apocalypse is down. Moving on to Sasquatch. This is the fight that I was probably most proud of my solo last time I was here with my rank 3 Apocalypse. There's some strategy to it and some finagling, which we will go over. But it is a really, really safe option in my opinion, provided, of course, that you have Despair maxed. And in my opinion, it's also highly recommended that you run the Petrify Mastery maxed, and we'll go over all those reasons. But the most important thing you want to do here is if you don't have the Disorient immunity from earlier, then get it quickly. But we ramped that on MODOK, so we're good to go. You do want to take down Life Cycle, but this fight is long enough that that's just not a priority. You're going to throw enough specials, you're going to throw enough heavies. The shield will be at its maximum cooldown by the time you are anywhere close to killing this mountain of fur and flesh. So the way I approach this fight is of course going for max ramp, but I always start with the special 2 because you want the concussion up as quickly as possible. You want to prevent as many possible triggers of Power Snack in particular as you possibly can. And that was way too late on that heavy counter. But yeah, You want to prevent as many triggers as you possibly can at Power Snack, and you want to get back up to your Special 3 so that you can double the potency and do that even more. Now at this point, it'd be really, really helpful if he threw a Special 2. Because I can't safely hit into him to recover that. If it prevents Power Snack, then we're fine. But if it doesn't, he's going to go red, and he's going to kill me. So, the debuffs fall off. We're into Wrath of Tanarak. The good thing about taking this much block damage is that we will... we're not that far from another Special 2 to get the concussion back up. Alright, so we've gone through one full Wrath cycle. Up from, I think that was at 0 charges, and then a full Wrath of Tanarak. And we're up to 4 again, and I make the mistake of thinking I can hit into his block to try and provoke him into throwing the Special 2, but he pulls the classic Thing strategy of not blocking, letting me intercept him, and the results are catastrophic. So, I could have maybe prevented that at the end, but unlike the earlier Spider-Ham ones, I'm pretty comfortable chalking that one up to the AI being rude. I don't think that you should ever have to dance for quite that long at the corner to get the opponent to throw a special that they have definitely had enough time to sit on. Oh well. Not going to get our solo this time. I believe that makes our 1, 2, 3... I think that's our 4th revive thus far. Because we didn't actually revive Kitty on Korg, right? So, 1 on Vision, 2 on Spider-Ham, which, again, is a fight that I soloed with Apocalypse last time. So, thus far, the worst fights have been the ones that went swimmingly last time with a rank 3. This time we have a rank 4, and I don't know, I guess Kabam is trying to humble me. Anyway, we know he's going to go into Wrath, so there's not really any point in throwing the Special 2 there. We're just going to make it harder on ourselves to refresh it, get caught a little bit on the dash back there. We are just blocking as much as we can to try and get him to throw these heavies, so that, because any time he spends throwing heavies is time he spends not comboing into our block. That's where I go with that. We get this up, Wrath is over, so we should be able to refresh these pretty easily. We're going to go for a parry here. He may go into Wrath again, but remember, primary goal here is just to rush to the Special 3. Especially after the way the first run at this fight went, we need that concussion permanent and doubled as quickly as possible. This is also why I practice being so comfortable countering Sasquatch's heavy and punishing Sasquatch's heavy in general, despite the unstoppable. Because for the specials, there's not really a window for you to punish them safely, or at least I don't think there is. For the heavy, there is a window. It's just small, and you need to be extremely careful. So he is in Wrath, but that's why I was throwing so many heavies before he went into Wrath, right? Because the point there is to try and make sure that the debuffs are basically at their maximum duration immediately when Wrath hits, so that that right there can work. I didn't actually have to refresh it while Wrath was up. There was still some duration left when it ended, so that I can safely throw this Special 3 without worrying about his increased combat power rate during Wrath. If that happens at the same time as Power Snack triggering, you can send him red even almost from nothing. So that's what I was trying to avoid, but now we have the doubled concussion, and this fight is going to be much safer. He will still trigger Power Snack in places, so we want to make sure that we're really responsible about baiting out those special attacks. We don't want to push him to 2 bars and then potentially send him red with Power Snack. But this fight is a lot easier now. Once you have the concussion doubled in potency, it's not that the fight's over, but you're a lot more stable. So we're going to wait out Wrath again here. Like I said last time, we were doing our best to make sure that the debuffs were almost at their full duration when Wrath started. They both lasted longer because we already had the degen up. Remember that Apocalypse's debuffs last longer on his specials if you already have a damaging debuff on the opponent. So it was very easy for us to hold on to those this time. And now we're just trying to get to another special 3. Thankfully he throws that. We just wait for what should have been a parry if my timing was better. And now we are fully ramped. This is extremely helpful because the concussion is the important one, but doubling the potency of the weakness is going to save us a ton of block damage over the course of this fight. That's very important. We, of course, are not getting any damage from the poison and the degen, because this is life cycle, but it is still vital to have all 4. And now is where we can start talking about despair. Because the reason we need all 4 debuffs up is that each of them is giving us a 15% reduction to Sasquatch's regeneration rate, so a total of 60 from those permanent debuffs. And then when we stun him, which obviously has to happen outside of Wrath, when we stun him, that is a 5th debuff, so that brings us up to 75. But this is where I said that it's so important to be running Max Petrify. Because if you have 2 bleeds on him, then you're up to a 90% reduction from despair, and poison also reduces regeneration rate, but it's important to know that poison applies at a different step, which is why you see this right here, where Sasquatch is still healing despite having a poison and 6 debuffs on him. So what we need is something else that's additive with despair, and that's where Petrify comes in, because as long as we can land a parry, then that stun, like I said, gets us up to 75 total for 5 debuffs, and another 30% reduction from Petrify while he is stunned. And the reason that that is so important is because the healing, even with poison, even with all these debuffs, can be a problem. But when you parry, it reverses his regen rate momentarily, and Sasquatch has a clause in his kit where he removes his regeneration effects when his regen rate is reversed. So even though you have all of this regen to cut through, if you stun him, they go away completely. And so you don't need to worry about controlling them at all times because you're periodically going to be removing them. On top of that, the super concussion is allowing us to avoid a lot of the triggers, and that helps as well. But Petrify just makes this fight so much safer. You don't have to worry about keeping the bleeds up at all times to maintain the healing. You just know that he's not going to have that much uptime on it, because whenever you're not in Wrath, you're going to be able to stun him. So again, it's so helpful that Apocalypse is disorient immune, so you can reliably parry, but you're going to be able to stun him, and you're just going to remove the regens entirely. So from that point, this just becomes stay alive and manage life cycle. Because he's beefy, but as long as he's not regenning constantly, we know that we can knock him down, put that shield on cooldown, and we'll get him there. Because that's the other thing, is we're reducing his regen rate so much that even if like life cycle triggers, even if we don't manage things perfectly, it's not going to be the full 10% of the node. It's going to be a much smaller amount, and so we're going to get another try at truly knocking him out in short order. Now, of course, basically all of those things I just said require him to not be in Wrath, so this is why it's so crucial to use your special 3s and lock those permanent debuffs in, because while he's in Wrath, you're just biding your time. He's very annoying. So you see there's quite a bit of regen there, and we parry, and away they go. That is, again, the key here. So doing a good chunk of damage there. He's down to 1%. And we land this. Notice that those red numbers are still happening on our bleeds. That is because while Life Cycle stops the damage from the debuffs themselves, it actually doesn't stop the instant damage that Deep Wounds does. And so that can be your ticket to finishing this fight and or just chunking him down at the end there if you're running Deep Wounds, because it's just bursts of damage that start mattering when he's very low on health. So not a solo of Sasquatch this time, but that was 90% to 0. We had a decent amount of health left at the end. That is how that fight should go. So now we're going to take Apocalypse in here against Killmonger. We're going to heal him up because the bleed damage at the start is going to be annoying. It's going to be very annoying. But basically, once that happens twice, we should be able to go immune. And then we don't have to worry, or I guess not twice, it's probably 3 times, but then we don't have to worry about blocking him, which is helpful because having to worry too much about not blocking him got us into that little situation there where I basically just panicked and ate a special 2, which is not something I normally do against Killmonger. So the challenge in this fight is basically managing his power gain and or dexing his heavy at the wall, which is just not something I'm very good at. There is a window, sometimes I'm reliable on it, but it's very quick. But yeah, we want to manage his power because that's going to affect our spacing throughout the fight, and that's very dangerous. And we want to build up to ultimately our full ramp. This time, I ended up throwing the Special 3 with only the debuffs from the Special 1 active. I would prefer to have the Concussion up, because it can help us get around reverb and all that, but having that weakness is enough for now, because that's just going to help with all of the ways that I lost health early on in the fight, which were 100% my fault, but I would like to mitigate them going forward because he has an awful lot of health left. And while Apocalypse has a lot of health, I was hoping to have more at this point in the fight. So waiting for reverb to go away, and then we go ahead and throw the Special 2. Get those on activation, they're going to last longer. But that Special 2 takes so much time that that's basically reverb is back. Thankfully, the concussion kind of stops it. It can stop it more than that, but we're trying to limit our hits because right now the concussion is only, if I'm remembering correctly, 30%, or maybe it's 35%, one of the two. Either way, it hasn't been doubled yet. We don't want to rely on it as a reverberation control measure just yet. Now, one way in which Apocalypse triggering all these debuffs and giving Killmonger so much power helps us is that when you're fighting Killmonger, baiting the Special 2 actually helps you control reverb in a funny way, because although giving Killmonger power is bad, because it increases the potency of the reverb if you time it poorly, if you time it well, having those indestructible hits in there allows you to trigger reverb while Killmonger is taking no damage, and therefore no damage is reflected on you. And that can be incredibly helpful for just limiting how much you take back. So notice that, like I said, we were at, I think, 38% health when Killmonger was still over 80. We are at 33% now, and he is down to 35. So getting that weakness up early, getting the concussion up, and making all of them permanent has really done a great job. He is still triggering reverb. We are taking damage back from it occasionally. There's been some block damage, but once ramped, this fight is pretty safely under control. It's also nice to have Apocalypse be bleed immune, because one of Thanos' phases involves some bleed damage. Nick Fury can kill you very quickly if he lands some bleeds on you, and so even though this was not the most beautiful fight in the world, especially at the beginning, taking it with Apocalypse has real value for us later. Alright, so we're almost there. The Poison and the Degen are doing excellent work thanks to class advantage, and Deep Wounds helps us out, gets us a little bit closer. Down he goes. And so now on to one of the other worst fights in the entire Gauntlet. At this point, I knew that if I didn't get him down efficiently, I was just going to do a team revive. So, honestly, I wasn't too worried about this. There are great counters for Void here. I didn't really bring any of them. I think I did pretty well with Apocalypse last time I took this. But yeah, none of my champions are amazing. We're just going to take a ton of damage from Intimidating Presence with these weaknesses on us. I don't have anyone with Purify. I don't really have anyone with, like, Cleanse or any other way to deal with this. I don't have anyone who's super in control of their combo. And so basically I'm just hoping to do as much damage as I possibly can. Not really off to a great start here. Even though I was taking damage from being close, I absolutely should have done a 4-hit combo there and thrown that special 2 in Blitz, because then we would have gotten the big boosted shocks from it. I just panicked. So that was very dumb. I believe I heal up Apocalypse here, which I kind of regret, because we just know he's going to lose a ton of health. But that's okay. I can get more potions later. I go ahead and throw on these power backs. They don't do a lot. The special boosts are probably more important than the power back boosts here, because these health pools are so large. You'll see what I mean. Because Apocalypse doesn't get any power for the red numbers, the burst damage on his specials, and only for the actual hits, he doesn't do great on these large health pools, but this Void is awful, so I will take literally any help I can get. We didn't time all of that properly, so now we have an Intimidating Presence debuff on us as well. We can at least do this. I think I tried to cancel into that special 1 there. I honestly cannot remember. Maybe I was just rushing to the special 2. Either way, like this, yeah. Taken a lot of damage thus far, and even with Power Shield, we haven't done nearly enough. I throw this, but he is poison immune when I throw it, so we only get credit for 3 debuffs, and we're just melting. I can't remember if I actually get to another special 1 here. Okay, I do. So this is not the worst in the world. Like, we did take off, I think, more than 50% of Void there. And so that lines up with how playing better. Last time I did 2-shot this with Apocalypse. Again, if I'm remembering correctly. Oh well. I brought a counter for Mojo, and the trade-off was I did not bring a counter for Void. This would have been amazing to have somebody like Jabari for... I saw people use Shang-Chi for this. I really hope I get him from that skill nexus at the end of Eternity of Pain. I'm missing so many great skill jams. Anyway, don't recommend Tiger for this. She's absolutely awful for it. The weakness turns off most of her kit. She is just here to do some damage. It's not a lot, but it's a bit. Like, that was another, what? 20% of his health right there? With class disadvantage, so I will absolutely take it. At this point, we're committed to a team revive anyway. I have no idea why I know why I didn't just go in with Spider-Man. Because I was hoping to keep him completely healthy for Thanos. Because I'd been told, like, that was part of how I planned this, was Spider-Man cheeses the boss, so I'm going to try and keep him healthy as my best option for that. Either way, because I'm not using Tigra on Nick, because I'm not using Tigra on Thanos, most likely, I could have done that. What I should have done is I absolutely should have brought Kitty in here. because even though Void is Incinerate immune, just Kitty being able to phase and build up to boosted specials here, I don't know that it would have soloed Void, but it definitely would have done a decent chunk of damage. Not soloed, I don't know that it would have finished Void. It would have done a decent chunk of damage without causing me to lose precious, precious health on my Apocalypse, because he is who I am most comfortable with for fighting Nick, and I just burned half his health. This is not cheap in potions. But that brings us up now to a total of 4 single revives, 1 on Vision, 2 on Spider-Ham, 1 on Sasquatch, and 1 team revive, with 2 fights left to go. So, feeling pretty good about this. Gonna go ahead and heal Apocalypse back up, because Nick can be nasty. And we're gonna head in. So, reminder of the important things here. Vigor means that there is a lot of healing to deal with. Lionheart means that we cannot reduce it with debuffs. So, Despair is fine, because that is not a property of the debuffs themselves. That is something that we are doing based on how many debuffs are on Nick. That's also true for the Petrify Mastery. It's not a property of the stun, it's something we're doing to Nick while he is stunned. However, we cannot use our special one, because Poison, by its very nature, reduces regen rate, and so will trigger Lionheart. So this fight is 100% Special 2, Special 3 against Nick. And that's fine, because those are plenty of damage. The concussion helps us anyway. It's going to further reduce his already low chance to gain tactical charges, because we're using a mutant against him. It's going to sometimes turn off Vigor, which I believe it already has here. Note that Vigor turns back on every time you cross a 25% threshold. That it seems to, like, the way that it resets the timer is to just reapply the node. So if you turn it off, you're safe until the next threshold, but then it will come back and you'll have to either deal with it or turn it off again. So we did turn it off right away after crossing 75%. We were a bit lucky there. We've also been very good about pushing him to his Special 2, so he has very few charges. We haven't taken too much block damage. And now we throw the Special 3 and lock in the stronger concussion and get that constant degen going. This is only going to work through his first life, because then he is going to purify these effects. But for now, we are doing plenty of damage. We're staying on top of charges. We haven't backed down to 0. We're staying on top of Vigor, between just flat out turning it off and Despair helping limit it when it does trigger. This is going extremely well. That's also why I'm making sure to land these bleeds here, because, again, more debuffs limits Vigor. Because it did trigger there, and that's quite a bit of healing, but it would have been a lot more if we weren't staying on top of our debuff count. Nick will go stun immune, but until he does, we might as well stun him as often as we possibly can, because it makes everything else easier. So we're back below 25%. We've reset the Vigor timer. We have him at 2 bars of power. I'm feeling very good about how this fight is going. Because he goes stun immune in his second life and basically removes our ramp, I want to go into that second life with as much health as humanly possible to make sure we have enough health to block, basically. Because we're going to need that health to block, because we're going to try and bait out heavies, we're going to try and push him to his Special 2s, and we're just going to avoid Special 1s building tactical charges at every chance we get. So here we go. We are also going to parry as much as we possibly can, even though it doesn't stun him, because this is something I find a lot of people seem to forget when fighting Nick, which is that parrying removes a tactical charge at a time, and that can be really important even when using a mutant, because some charges are going to get through, and when that happens, you want to reduce the ones that are there. So that's especially true when he's at 13, because if he had triggered charges one more time, it would have been 2 of them. He would have gone unblockable. That's why I backed off and parried there. We baited that Fury so that we could throw a heavy, or baited that Heavy so we could throw a Heavy in response to it. We also messed up the special 1 evade. Oh well. Sorry, I messed up the special 1 evade. I probably should have gone for the special 3 there to knock it in, but I basically figured, okay, the fight's close enough to over. We're staying enough on top of his charges. I just wasn't really worried about it here. Practicing your repairing against Nick is very helpful before this fight, because you saw how it took down 2 more charges right there. And then we finish it with 1 more special too, so Apocalypse is an amazing solo option for this. I believe I did that last time as well with a rank 3, so that works. But just follow those tips. Don't use the special 1, stay on top of your reparries, try and push to special 2. So now we have Thanos, and like I said, my plan for this was that the other fight I brought Spider-Man 2099 for was Thanos. Because Wither, for some reason, gets around the clause in his abilities where it says he's immune to power manipulation, and allows you to reduce his power gain. But because his first true phase involves bleed damage, and Apocalypse already has the bleed immunity ramped up, and because Apocalypse is just tanky, it's been a long time since I fought Thanos in this form, and so my idea was, alright, I'll run in with Apocalypse, I'll get used to the specials again, because it's been a long time, I'll probably end up dying to them, and then I'll switch over to Miguel. So, came into this fight fully expecting to get nailed by a special 2 at some point. Not a perfect special 1 dex, but we got the important part. We do hit into the auto block, which was very dumb. I should not have done that. I should have just waited, because we just healed him, right? Even with the poison and debuffs on, it was just a complete waste. There's the perfect dex. So we don't hit in. We are not futzing with that auto block. We're doing a lot of heavies here. And we're trying to ramp ourselves. So clearly he's immune to concussion, because that's the way a lot of abilities that make you immune to ability accuracy modification work. But we have our other 3 debuffs, and we are going to try and push to the special 3 to lock them in. If we do end up eating a special 3 at some point from Thanos, then having that weakness ramped up is going to be very helpful, and then just having the degen and poison ticking away the entire time is going to account for quite a bit of damage in the end. Plus, it makes all of our specials hit harder. But I really like to focus on the utility that all of Apocalypse's debuffs provide, because it really is a great set. He's an absolute monster of a champion. We're heavy chaining while we can, because more bleed damage is good. That's just a bonus of the fact that Thanos relies on ability power rate and not combat power rate to be dangerous. If you get him into the corner, you can capitalize on it. Cool, so now those are all permanent, and that's just in time to push him into the second life. So, reminder, for this one, we're going to take a bunch of degen damage, and then heal it all back, so the fact that we were pretty healthy going into this phase, incredibly helpful. We need to dodge just the orange projectiles in that special too, and we need to stay healthy, because that degen after it will kill us if we lose basically any health from the special itself. And then we also need to watch for the evade, of course. But we're doing good damage here. Basically, while he can't go red, while he can't get a special 3, I recommend being as aggressive as humanly possible while he's at 2 bars here, because he's not going to gain any more power. You just want to wail on him, do as much damage as possible, and then eventually he'll throw it. It's also worth noting that if you manage to avoid getting hit by the specials or by him in general, that degen effectively heals you, so you can heal back your block damage, because it tries to give you back 100% of what you lost, and recovery boosts that further. So we're staying away from blocking Thanos, because that is going to trigger Death Touch and we will just flat out die. But we did play a little risky at the start there to get that intercept, so that this special 3 right here isn't going to hit us that hard. But it looks like the weakness did enough that it didn't even hit the 25% cap, because it only took us down to 78%, right? So everything I said earlier about Apocalypse's weakness once it gets ramped being really, really strong, I say again. Then we block here, try and bait out a heavy, because same thing as when he's at 2 bars in the phase before this. Once he's red, there's no penalty to being aggressive. You want to wail on him as much as you possibly can while he's there. So this time we weren't able to get an intercept, and confirming my suspicions does not take us down even to 50%. We're good to go there. I step back into this special 1 because I do not want to risk Death Touch, and there we go. The poison and degen finish him off, and so my tester champion of Apocalypse actually ends up soloing Thanos, and so that brings the total for the entire run to 4 single revives, 1 team revive, and, let's be honest, quite a few potions. So that beats the heck out of my last run, which was 17 individual revives, and I think 1 or 2 team revives. So I'm extremely, extremely happy with that total. So moving on to the rewards, which you can see I already started opening in the background here. Here's the 1 to 2 6-star gem. Lands on Mutant. I don't think I have any mutants right now that I am just dying to take up, but I have a good chunk of them. So don't mind that. And then we're going to go over here and open up our 6-star crystals. So as a reminder, the feature champions I still want out of this are Black Cat and Rintra. And there are still quite a few sub-feature pulls that I want. And Elsa was maybe the biggest of them. I've wanted her for a very long time. The leader of my alliance, Rob Hopp, is a huge Elsa fan, was one of the very first rank 3s. Campo, who is my right-hand man in BG3 for a very long time, is an incredible Elsa player. I've seen her do amazing things from a distance, and I'm very glad I finally have one of my own. This one is funny to me, because I joked when Black Panther went to Sig 80 that maybe I would have to rank for him. And then I joked about that again when he went to Sig 100. And now he's at 120. So, I don't know. Kabam's trying to send me a sign. Maybe that happens at some point. It's going to be a bit, because I have plans for the next few, but I really do like playing Black Panther. So, maybe that does happen at some point. And this is just amazing. This is one of the best Nexuses I've ever seen for my purposes. Like, I was just talking about how I do want Spider-Man 2099 Sig to be better. Miguel scales really well with that. He's already ranked 3. I'm actually a big fan of Vision Arcus, and I think that he has value in Battlegrounds, and so awakening him would be cool. And then Symbiote Supreme is somebody that I only pulled a 5-star of a couple months ago. He's eluded me for a very long time, and he is in the current attacker tactic pool for Alliance War. So I was just completely giddy to open this, but I gotta take Symbiote. It is just... I've gone so long without him, I need to add him to my roster. Absolutely ecstatic with all of those pulls. Ecstatic with how Gauntlet went overall, and I hope that watching this has helped you prep, or at least entertained you. And until next time, thanks so much for watching, and take care.